My name is Jonah Kessel. I'm a video journalist for the New York Times. I live in Asia, partly based in Hong Kong and partly based in Beijing. I've been traveling for, I guess, since 1999, in some respect, on and off, and it has certainly changed my world. But the whole point, I think, when I came back to Vermont to study was to figure out how to make journalism a career where I could travel. And initially, it didn't really happen quickly because I was working at small papers in the U.S. at first. It was always with the goal of getting out of the country, and trying to see as many places as possible. And it was so I didn't really have some type of deep fascination with Asia when I was younger. I mean, if I had it, I didn't know I had it. I had a fascination with everything. I mean, I remember at points back then where if someone had been like, hey, do you want to go here? Wherever it was, I'd say yes. It didn't matter, whatever country it was, whatever part of the world. And so I had, my first international job was actually in North Africa, in Algeria. And from there, I got hired in China. But I got kind of recruited to work in China. And I had no intention of going there. I just happened to get a job there. But going there sparked this whole other career track that, at the time I thought I was going to go for a year. And after that first year was up, it was pretty clear to me that I wasn't going home. And then, so that was, what year is this? 2016, so that was 7 years ago when I got to Asia. And, since that point I've been to almost every country in Asia. But now, working. And so I guess if the goal at the beginning was to make a career out of traveling, definitely did it. And now travel is a very different thing. Making yourself live in a place that is so different from where you grew up certainly makes you understand the world differently. And I couldn't stress enough how important that is. I think if you do not travel, there's no way you would ever be able to understand our world. And if you don't understand our world, maybe you're not really being a responsible global citizen. And I think that's important. I heard there's this debate a couple weeks ago, and Marco Rubio said something really silly like, Barack Obama is trying to make America like the rest of the world. Well, I don't want that. I want America to be like America. And this comment to me really hit me because it seemed like such a ridiculous thing to think that we're not in the same world. That what happens in China doesn't affect what happens in America, and what happens in Syria isn't affecting what happens in America. I mean, as time moves forward and travel becomes so universally part of our culture, the world becomes much more unified. And to try to avoid that or try to go against that, to me, is really a kind of a back-looking type of attitude. It's not looking forward into what has to happen, especially when you start talking about the environment, which, no matter what going on in our geopolitical world, the environment affects us all. And so by looking at us as one world, I think that's the only way to start that real process of improving that people really understand the dangers of the world. And that's mostly to blame from the media, really. People right now are very afraid of ISIS, right? Everybody is scared of a terrorist attack. But I think you're I read, I can't remember the exact statistics, but you're more likely to be killed in a plane crash than a terrorist attack. And I mean, people are actually probably incorrectly scared of plane crashes, but you shouldn't be scared of being killed by a terrorist if you're not scared of a plane crash. It's just these kind of unjustified fears that, when you see CNN and something bad happens and they repeat the news every 2 minutes and they just tell you that nothing has changed and they keep repeating this bad news at you, those type of things really have a big effect on people, as well as our entertainment shows, right? I think it's Marshall McLuhan. There's these old studies that show the more TV you watch, the more similar you will think reality is like TV. So in like the TV reality, like 1 out of 4 people is a cop, and another 25% of people are doctors, and like people are shooting each other all the time. This is not reality. This is TV's reality. But because people, Americans in particular, watch so much TV, they believe a lot of this to be true, and that like makes them scared. It makes them not want to go out of their comfort zone and go to places in the Middle East or in Asia or in Africa, anywhere in the developing world, really. I don't know how many countries I've been to. Maybe like, 60 or 70 countries or something. I don't know. And I probably have some type of fun experience in every place. Like I don't ever remember going to a country and being like, wow, that sucked. I've never had even my bad travel experiences are somehow good. I've had these, incidences where you get stuck someplace that's not good, or maybe it's even dangerous. But in retrospect, when I look back at those experiences and the process of getting out of trouble is usually like a much richer experience than whatever you're going to do anyway.
Telling the truth, I've said it before, tomorrow.
Going out on a cross-country road trip can mean more than just seeing a bunch of tourist attractions. Mike Mariner and his 2 college friends set out to travel the country and meet inspiring people, which resulted in them taking that experience to the next level and starting their company, Road Trip Nation.
When you're growing up, you're naturally pretty sheltered and whatever, from wherever you grew up, you only know what you know. And the first 20 years of your life, you're kind of surrounded by family, familiarity, school. Everything's been pretty boxed in for you. So I do think that some type of experience in your 20s is just important to kind of shatter that a little bit. And some things it's good to do incrementally. Some things you just need to kind of take control, and just go for it, and there's no reason not to do it. It doesn't have to be a motorhome. It can be a station wagon, it doesn't have to be 3 months, it could be anything. And the important thing too, I think, about meeting people out there on the road is that you don't just want to make it a touristy road trip. Oh, let's go see Mount Rushmore. You totally miss the experience by doing that, and you kind of stay at a level of superficialness. That's where I think our road trip was so powerful, because we spent 6 months before. We were very intentional about the trip, and we spent 6 months before calling people out there and just seeing who they knew, and it put us in, I think, a mindset of curiosity. And so half of our road trips came from being booked before, but half of the interviews came just from meeting people on the road too. When we were in Maine, we didn't cold call lobstermen in Maine. We were jumping in the water in Maine to kind of bathe and bathe off, and we met this guy who knew a lobsterman, and we just asked him if we could sit down with him and learn about the story. And we spent an hour with him sitting on his boat, learning about how he became a lobsterman. If you change your mindset in terms of really looking at the world as a classroom and learning from the people and their stories, it gets way, way richer. And I think if you do that enough in your 20s, you set up your mindset where you take that with you your entire life. And everything you do, you go deeper into it. There are certain human rights that should be transparent and consistent across all walks of life. But America is so not one American culture. There's so much diversity and so much difference. And I think that the earlier you experience it, the better you kind of understand how, what the country is made up of and how it works. When we were on our road trip, there was no Google Maps, and we had cell phones, but no Google Maps is huge. We used paper maps, which sounds so funny to say now, and we had to ask people for directions all over the place. And I think that's one thing that you miss now is like, when you're lost, you don't pull over and talk to some backwoods guy in the middle of Arkansas, about like how the hell you get out of here. And then you get to know them and talk to them, maybe end up having dinner with them or park your motorhome. They give you a shower and make you a meal. And I think the technology has made it easier, but it's also made it more insulating. And I think even more so, if you're on a road trip or a trip like that, to be really proactive about not being insulated. You don't really know who you are on all levels, especially in your early 20s. So I think it's important to it's a good notion of leaving home, leaving all of those frameworks and expectations of what you think you are, getting away from that, moving forward, and then being in totally foreign, new places, and then meeting all these people on top of that.
When taking a look at travel in the 21st century, media and technology have definitely played a huge role in shaping people's opinions on certain parts of the world. This oftentimes brings up concerns with potential travelers on where it is safe to go.
I'm Eric Worth, and I'm the Assistant Dean for Admissions for SIT Study Abroad. Donald Watt, who was our founder, decided that there could potentially be less conflict in the world if people just got to know each other, especially if youth just got to know one another. There would be less wars. While Ebola was limited to Sierra Leone and Liberia, it still impacted students' perceptions and families' perceptions of studying abroad in places like Ghana, Cameroon, and Senegal that had no reported cases of Ebola, but you still fight perceptions of geographically people aren't necessarily familiar with distances on the African continent. You can have the same kind of conversations, with international students wanting to come in the U.S. There's domestic terrorism within the U.S. and mass shootings, and people may view the U.S. as an unsafe location, but as U.S. citizens yourselves, you would understand sort of the context of, well, that happened in Colorado and you're studying in Massachusetts, or that happened, in X state and we live thousands of miles away or hundreds of miles away. I mean, there were bombings in Boston, and yet Boston is one of the major hubs for receiving international students into the U.S. And so you can't take it lightly, but you have to look at, one thing is what the media portrays, and the other thing is real safety and security on the ground. And so we're always weighing the real safety and security on the ground. There's two things to consider in that. One is that the world is a lot smaller thanks to the internet and social media, so the idea that you know or may have been exposed to people, ideas, viral videos, pieces of culture from countries that are, farther off than just Western Europe or maybe Japan. And so I think people have a lot more exposure to the world through the internet and social media. So their options all of a sudden may seem a little bigger, whereas before maybe you didn't know anybody from Jordan, now you do. And then the other conversation to have around media and technology is when students are abroad, it's so easy to stay connected to home. And so while you're abroad, you may, whereas, 15 years ago, you wouldn't have had Wi-Fi everywhere. Today, if you study abroad in Vietnam, you don't even need to purchase an international cell phone plan because there's Wi-Fi everywhere, and then they'll give you the password, and you can FaceTime your friends while you're sitting in a cafe having a cup of coffee. And so what does that do when you're so connected still to your home culture? It can add a lot of sense of security for the students studying abroad or for their families who are concerned about them, but it also limits their integration or how immersed they can be in the host culture when you constantly can check your Facebook feed and see what your friends did 5 minutes ago, even with a time difference.